There's a new award-winning 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey that's been taking the market by storm, Penelope Bourbon. Bottled in historic Bardstown, Kentucky, Penelope's balanced yet flavorful taste profile comes from a unique blend of 3 bourbon mash bills. Currently available in multiple expressions, Penelope is remarkably smooth and flavorful. So whether you're sipping neat or using it in your favorite cocktail, Penelope is the perfect choice for you. Penelope's full lineup is available in select markets as well as online. Visit PenelopeBourbon.com to learn more and to find a store near you.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight here live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Mark, I am doing so great. It is good to be back in the Bourbon Life Studios after a week off for us. Nice to be back.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I kept thinking the week before last was a week off, but it really wasn't. It was you and me. We just kind of hung out together.
That's right.
Which we had not done that in a while, which was fun.
Yeah, we were overdue for it, I think.
Yeah. So now we're back doing a regular the regular shows. We're back to our regularly scheduled programming, right?
That's right. We're back to good shows, good programming with actual guests, compelling content, all the things that people like.
Things that people want to hear about other than you and me just talking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, we got a great guest lined up. I'm excited about this one. So Matt, if you want to, instead of just wasting time, man, if you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight, I think that'd be great.
Let's do it. Let's get right to the talent here. He is the master distiller at Ross and Squibb Distillery, Ian Stirsman. Ian, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast. How you doing?
I'm good, and thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on.
Yeah, man, this is great. I'm looking forward to this. I got the opportunity to meet you a few months ago, back at the Bourbon Classic, right? I think it was over in Louisville. Yeah, so it was great. It was great to get to meet you. I think you maybe had some Repeal Reserve you were pouring, if I remember correctly. I think possibly because that's one of my favorites. So, but yeah, it was nice to meet you, and so I'm glad we were able to finally get you on the show here. And before we get into everything, though, we always like to. Well, I say we always like to. I forget to do it half the time, but we like to talk about what we're going to be drinking. So in this round, we've got the Remus Straight Bourbon poured up, and I don't know. I can throw it to you, Ian, if you want to kind of tell everybody a little bit about that Remus Straight Bourbon. That'd be great.
Yeah, this is our flagship bourbon. It's 94 proof. And it's a blend of 2 different high rye bourbon mash bills. So it's our 21% rye bourbon and our 36% rye bourbon. And those are 2 of the oldest bourbon recipes we've been making at the distillery since for many, many decades. And they're both a little bit higher rye, the 21 and 36%. So we like to call them a Indiana style bourbon, a little higher than your more traditional Kentucky style bourbons. But the barrels we picked for this are going to be at least 5 years old. And we think blending those 2 different mash bills allows us to get a really good profile with the high rye bourbon. It just allows us to create a little bit, take the best flavors from both of those 2 different mash bills. And both of these mash bills also we use our VE strain. So kind of a light fruity notes is what the V yeast strain is known for. We've been using that yeast strain here at the distillery ever since the 40s. So.
Oh, okay. All right. So Matt, there you go, buddy. You got some high rye bourbon. Matt's a big rye fan. So anytime we get access to a rye whiskey, which round 2, he's been looking forward to this one, but even with this high rye bourbon, I know he's super excited about that for sure. So Matt, I'm going to throw it over to you like I always do, man. What do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
Nose on this has got, it's like a best of both worlds kind of nose. I pick up, surprisingly, the first thing I picked up was the rye. Got like a nice whiff of spearmint right up front, but now as it's sitting around and getting some more time in the glass, getting a little bit more air, the bourbon's coming out. There's really nice vanilla, really nice, like kind of a like maple cream type flavor that I'm picking up. Almost like a maple frosting, kind of like you would think on like a maple glazed donut or something. And then I think some more of that barrel influence is coming through with a little bit of the oak, a little bit of the toasty aromas to it. And then picking up that fruit, to me, it's kind of orange zest, orange creamsicle kind of nose near the end of it, but really nice. Just like I was saying, a great blend of the rye characteristics, but also that good solid backbone from the bourbon.
Yeah, that's what kind of stands out to me is that that orange. You talking about the fruit, Matt. That was the first thing that really caught my attention, was kind of the fruity aromas that come up. And I actually was picking up almost a little bit of like a light cherry off of this one maybe as well. It smelled like, but that citrus, the orange, I think was coming through to me. I didn't miss. I think I missed the mint. But now this is just 2 bourbons, right? So this is all. It's the 21 and 36 mash bill bourbons, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. All right. So no rye whiskey in it. It's 2 bourbons. No. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something, Matt, because you said rye, and I'm like, wait a second, what's he talking about?
Good bit of high rye in there, eh?
High rye, yeah. I mean, you're borderline at 36, right? You're 15 points away from a legal rye, so you're close to it, right? But yeah, I get those. I mean, the bourbon notes come through, like you said, Matt. The traditional notes, that toasted oak. You said toasted oak. I'll have to come back to that one and see what I get. But yeah, I mean, I like the combination, the two, 21% rye. I'm a fan of 36 rye, or bourbon, that's a very nice mash bill. I like the flavor. I'm looking forward to jumping in on a palate on this one. So, Ian, how we do? Did we all right on those notes?
No, you guys did great. We might have to hire you to write our tasting notes. That was good. Yeah, no, I get the same thing. I get a little bit of cornbread on the nose, but the citrus, it's kind of a crisp citrus as well. No, those were right on.
Awesome, great. So Ian, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Let's jump over and let's talk about you. Now that we've talked about the whiskey, we'll come back to that here in just a few minutes. But let's talk about you. Can you tell everybody about who you are, kind of your background, where you're from originally? What you did prior to getting into whiskey, and then how it is that you ended up where you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. So it's just about an hour and a half, kind of northeast of the distillery.
Yeah.
Gets a bad rap, but it was a great place to grow up.
The Flyers, right? The Dayton Flyers.
Yeah, the Dayton Flyers. I did. Little big Flyers.
I did my 4 years there.
Nice. So yeah, I grew up in Dayton. I went to school at Ohio University in Athens.
Yep. Great Halloween party there.
Yep. I was strictly studying when I was there.
We all were, right? Yeah.
So I started school. I originally started as a biology major, and I did that for a couple years, and then I switched my major to chemical engineering. I just really liked the chemistry, math, physics, all that stuff. Yeah. So I had a minor in biology, major in chemical engineering, and I graduated. I graduated a year later than I should have in 2009, which was not the best time to be graduating. Right, had a little economic crisis in 2008.
Right. Yeah.
the first job offer I took, and that was for a paper mill in Chillicothe, Ohio. So I
wow.
spent the first 3 years of my career working for a big integrated paper mill in Chillicothe, Ohio, which was really a pretty cool process making paper. But just the industry's kind of dwindling a little bit. The stuff we made book paper. Things are going to Kindles.
Right.
We made envelope paper. People email now. So it wasn't the best long-term thing. So a recruiter actually reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in a job as a shift manager at this distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. I never heard of, and I said, yeah, making whiskey sounds a little more fun than making paper, and I hadn't really had an interest in whiskey before that. But in college, I liked to brew beer a lot.
Okay.
There was a couple other chemical engineers with me that started like a homebrew club, and I got into that. And I thought making beer would be a really good job as a chemical engineer, but I just didn't find that right away. So when they called me about making whiskey, I was really excited about that. I thought that sounded awesome. So I was a shift manager at the distillery for about a year. In that role, I basically just managing the off shift, working with all the operators and everything to make sure that the goals for the day were achieved. And then I did that for a year. I moved into a process engineering role, really more like process improvement type of projects. And then at the time, our master distiller was a guy named Greg Metz.
Mhm.
And he'd been there for a really long time. He's kind of a legend in the industry a little bit. And there was a big experience gap there between him and the rest of our technical team. So they kind of saw that and they created a role to kind of, help bring some people up in experience fast. And they called that role the fermentation distillation manager. So me and another guy that was working there at the time went into this fermentation distillation manager role. And they had us move around to different areas of the distillery, managing each area for a year or two at a time, kind of working with Greg, learning from him. So I managed our yeast and yeast propagation and fermentation areas for a while. I managed our cooking for a while, our whiskey distillation for a while, our dryer house and utility operations for a while. So I moved all around the distillery, kind of learning every different part. And then Greg retired, and he moved on. And then we had a guy named Gordon Working, who'd also been in the industry for a very long time, took Greg's place for a couple years. And then when Gordon retired, it was a kind of right place, right time. So
Yeah.
got lucky.
Yeah. It's funny how much hard work you have to put in to have so much luck, huh?
I know. I was good timing too, because it was a good time to get in the business. Now we have like 5 young engineers that are all more talented than me. So if I started today, I'd never get there.
That'd be like Ian. Ian who? I'm sorry. What? So I got to ask you, because I grew up in Eastern Kentucky and used to travel to Columbus to go to the doctor up there when I was a kid. And I remember we used to go past the paper mill, and I believe is there a New Boston, Ohio by chance or something? Maybe it was a Chillicothe plant, but anyway, it smelled awful. It's the paper plant smelled. So which one smells better to you, the paper plant or where you're at now?
The distillery smells a lot better. It would be a bad day at the distillery if it smelled like the paper mill.
But they do smell bad. Is that right? The paper mills, I mean, I'm trying to remember back from when I was a kid, but it seems like it was the paper mill that really just smelled bad.
Yeah, the integrated mills do. So the ones with the pulp mills, and we were an integrated mill. So yeah, it's kind of a nasty smell.
So you're living the dream now, man. You get to go to work and smell that delicious, that mash and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what a cool story, man. I mean, that's awesome that you're able to get in and just grow and get to work under Greg. I mean, Greg, like you said, I mean, he's kind of a rock star. in the industry. We've had him on the show before. Seems like a genuinely super nice guy.
Yeah, Greg was great to learn from. He was real welcoming when I first started, and I was lucky to be able to spend as much time with him as I did.
Yeah, that's very cool. So I'm curious because you said that you were more into the beer back when you were in college, and it's funny. It seems like there's a lot of master distillers that kind of like Danny Kahn comes to mind over at Buffalo Trace. I know he was big into making his own beer. Then got into distilling a little bit in college, but he was a beer guy as well, I believe. So I mean, that kind of seems to be. But I mean, technically, you are making beer before you distill it, right? So
yep.
There you go.
We even call it beer until we distill it.
Yeah. So there that kind of works into that. But using the chemical engineering degree, I mean, is that something that applies to what you're doing on a regular basis? I mean, do you actually feel like you get to use that training and that education in your role as master distiller?
Absolutely. I use it every day. I mean, we're very scientific with what we do. We're very methodical. Like I said, we have 5 process engineers working at the distillery, as well as we have a director of process engineering and analytics as well. So we have a big technical team. We're very scientific about everything we do. So
okay, all right. Well, that's cool. That's good to know. I mean, that seems to be kind of the way that distilleries are headed. There's art to it, obviously, but there's a ton of science to it. And it seems like distilleries are headed that way, or that's really becoming more acceptable to talk about. It seems like, I think in the past, if you talked about the science of distilling, everybody wanted to romanticize distilling, that it was this art that people just randomly did and things just turned out the way they were. But I think a lot of people don't understand how much science actually goes into it, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of science, and you really, I think the art kind of came from, there's all these traditions in distilling, and for the most part, the industry is still pretty old school, because I think a lot of it stems from that the feedback loop for making whiskey is so long, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep doing what works, because if you change something, you don't really know if it's going to work for however many years that whiskey's going to sit in the barrel, right?
Yeah.
So we pass down all these traditions of what we know works at our distilleries, and we kind of keep doing those. But now, if we want to get better from that point of just those traditions, then you have to be really methodical and scientific and make small changes and evaluate those changes really thoroughly, so that you're not messing something up over a long period of time, but that you are getting better, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, going back to your college days and then when you started working at the distillery, did you slowly start becoming a whiskey drinker, or was it still you're more of the beer the beer brewing kind of guy?
I kind of jumped right in. Okay. It wasn't slowly. I kind of overnight became a whiskey drinker. Like right when I got the job, one of the first things I did was I went to the Century Bar in Dayton. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but there's a really, really good whiskey bar in Dayton called the Century Bar. And I went there right when I got the job, before I even started, and went and tried a couple of the whiskeys that were made at the distillery. And I fell in love pretty much right away.
Yeah. Nice. No, that's really very cool. So Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey. Speaking of which, let's talk about the palate and the finish on the Remus Straight Bourbon. And again, this one's 94 proof. So doesn't drink like 94 proof. I'll just throw that out there before you jump in, Matt. But go ahead and tell me, what are you picking up on the palate on this one?
The palate's nice and spicy right up front. That rye comes through, good peppercorn, nice little good touch of heat. And then Ian, that cornbread that you were talking about, I'm starting to pick up some of those great corn pudding notes on the palate. Kind of your typical bourbon notes that come in there. There's some sweetness, some honey, a little bit of the maple, almost like a hazelnut kind of toffee type flavor as well. And then some of that, the rye comes through in the finish. There's some of that peppercorn, a little bit of herbs, a little bit of that orange blossom, kind of that we were talking about earlier, that citrus, that crisp finish note on it as well. But great drinking bourbon. It's got really good flavor, 94 proof. It's not overly warm. It's not weak in the least. I think it hits right on where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. Well, I mean, great points you made there. That rye obviously hits first, that 2136 combination there. You obviously pick that up on your palate, but it's not like a high proof bourbon. It doesn't drink. To me, it actually drinks less than 94. I don't get that proof feel. I think sometimes if you say 94 proof, people will assume that it's going to be kind of a hotter bourbon to drink, or, something that's going to, on the palate, maybe a little bit more hard for them to handle. It's not at all. It's a very, I don't like to use the word smooth at all. It's a very easy drinker to enjoy. I do like that rye spice kick that you talked about, Matt, but that citrus, like you said, comes through as well. But then those standard, typical, nice bourbon aromas, that sweetness from the corn that comes through. I think that maybe surprised me because I was expecting with 21% rye and 36% rye that it was just going to be spice all the way through. But there's just a really nice combination, like you said, Matt, of that sweetness and that corn flavor that blends with that spiciness from the rye that really, really gives it a very nice, really, I don't want to say soft. I don't like that word either, but it's just a really nice drinking bourbon. So, all right, Ian, how we do on that one?
You did great. That's exactly kind of what we're going for. We want those rye notes to really lead. We're at our distillery. We love rye. We're known for our rye whiskey and our high rye bourbons, and we really want that rye to kind of lead off to set it apart a little bit. A lot of people are doing high rye bourbons now, but we were kind of the pioneers, we think.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Matt, we're at the end of round one here, so I say we take a quick break and get a word from our sponsors. But before we do that, what final thoughts on this Remus bourbon?
I think it's great. I think it definitely is a perfect representation of a nice 94 proofer with great amount of flavor. It's not certainly it's layered. It's got a good amount of everything you're looking for. Not going to burn you up, but you're definitely not wondering if there's any flavor, any alcohol in it. It hits on the right notes.
Yeah. One thing, taking that last little sip there, the mouthfeel on it is just it's really nice as well. That's something I noticed and I forgot to mention. It's got a very nice, kind of coats the mouth, kind of almost like a creaminess to it, which is kind of weird to say when you talk about bourbon. But I like the way that it coats. So maybe that's going to some of the oiliness in it there, Ian. I'm not sure. But Matt, did you get that sensation?
Yeah,
I think, does that make sense?
You're right on it.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Ian Stirsman, the master distiller at Ross Squibb Distillery, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome back for round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight, again, still here live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. And Matt, how you doing out there tonight,
Hey,
man?
Mark, I'm doing great, and I know for a fact I'm about to be doing better, because why would I leave before this?
Yeah, man, not a chance. I knew that you would be sticking around for sure. for this one, because I know this is one of your favorites. I mean, this pour, you talk about this one quite often, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there, that this is one of your favorite pours. I know how much you enjoy this one, but before we get into that, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us?
Absolutely.
Tonight?
We have the man behind our next pour. He is the head distiller, the master distiller at Ross Squibb Distillery, Ian Stirsman. Ian, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks. I'm excited for this next pour as well.
Yeah. We always have to thank our guests for not leaving after the first or second round. So hopefully, we'll make it through this round and you'll stick around for the third one as well. So, we feel obligated to say thank you, Ian, for hanging out with us. But let's jump into what we're going to be drinking this round. You want to tell everybody, as we've built up this anticipation, it's not a cliffhanger, man. This is like a crescendo to the greatness of what we're going to be drinking this round. Do you want to share with everybody what we actually have poured up?
Yeah, this is our Rossville Union Rye barrel proof offering. So this is going to be 117.2 proof. The barrels I picked for this are all at least 7 years old. And I picked barrels from 2 different mash bills for this. So it's our 95% rye, 5% malted barley mash bill, and our 51% rye, 45% corn, 4% malted barley mash bill. And for this expression, it's very heavily weighted with the majority of those barrels being the 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And yeah, I'll let you guys give it
awesome.
Give it a nose.
Has it always been a blend like that, or is this something new?
No, the Rossville has always been a blend of those 2 different mash bills.
Huh.
There you go, Matt. The more you know, man.
That's
every
right.
day, learning something different. So what do you think in terms, I know you're excited. Mm-hmm. I know you're just like, when he said the majority or more of it's 95.5, that got a big smile out of you. So what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
It's for a majority 95.5. Oftentimes, especially coming out of MGP, I think of like big, bold, spicy heat, peppercorn, like a huge bouquet of grass and herb. But I've got to say this is quite subdued from that, and it's absolutely lovely. It's got this really nice creaminess right on the front of the nose that kind of starts to lead into those rye flavors, picking up like a lot of herbs, a lot of like thyme, a lot of lemon balm, a little bit of rosemary. Some of those baking spices come across too. There's like little bits of cardamom, little cinnamon. And then like it's big with, I pick up like the zesty citrus, oranges. I pick up a little bit of lime, almost like some lemon on it as well, but good influence from the barrels. I think the oak really comes through, gives it kind of this nice rounded dustiness, a little bit of age on the nose as well in there. It's just really, really nice, really beautiful.
Yeah. Matt, the lemon really comes through to me that you were talking about. You mentioned lemongrass, and this really reminds me of the plants that we used to have at our house, the lemongrass that we used to have. When you'd break it off, get it on your hands, you could smell that, that lemongrass, that oil really that comes through. But then also almost like the sweetness. I'm really surprised, like you said, about, because I expected that nice big punch up front of this just rye just in your face, but it's not. I got a little mintiness off the initial nose. And then it kind of transitioned into that lemongrass type of aroma. But then I started picking up, it's almost like a maple syrup, like a very sweet brown sugar maybe, or brulee sugar, maple syrupy. It almost made me think that it almost is reminiscent of something that would be finished in a secondary barrel that's got some type of sweeter type of spirit, maybe rum, Caribbean rum or something like that. I mean, it has that almost maple syrupy quality that I don't expect from a rye from MGP. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like you said, Matt, you kind of expect that kind of kick in the face with that nice rye punch. But man, the sweetness, the aroma, that maple syrupy type of aroma. Just, it's awesome. Ian, so how do we do?
You guys did good again. The only thing that I get that you guys didn't mention is, to me, and I find this in a lot of our ryes, probably a lot of my favorite ryes that come from the distillery, is that mint and some like dill pickle too. There's a
Okay.
little bit of dill pickle note for me in there.
Gotcha.
And that combination of the mint and the dill with the rye spice and those sweeter flavors that you're talking about is really what makes this for me. It's my personal favorite of everything we make. I really love rye whiskey in general, and this is my everyday drinker. This is what I'm reaching for when I come home
Wow.
from the distillery.
I wish I could say that Rossville Union Barrel Proof was my everyday drinker.
Hey, it can be.
It can be, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it should be, Matt. I mean, it's the nose is great. We'll talk about some, man, I'm starting to pick up other notes, almost like tobacco leather, as it's set in the glass a little bit longer. So Ian, I mean, the distillery obviously has a great history. There's a lot to it. There's been a lot going on here recently as well with regard to some mergers and name changes and things. But can you kind of go back through and just talk about the history of the distillery, where you're at, and the changes that have gone on and where you are currently with everything?
Yeah, so up until just a couple years ago, most people knew us as MGP of Indiana. But we recently changed our name to the Ross and Squibb Distillery. And we did that because we acquired Luxco a couple years ago. They're now the branded spirits arm of MGP. And with that came a little bit of a renewed focus on our brands coming out of our distillery, the Remus Bourbons and Rossville Union Ryes. And we wanted a name that really paid homage to the history we have at the distillery, because like you said, we're one of America's oldest distilleries. We have a lot of distilling heritage here in Lawrenceburg. So we changed the name to the Ross and Squibb Distillery to pay tribute to those first two distilleries that sat where our distillery sits now. And those were the Rossville Union Distillery and the Squibb Distillery. So the Squibb Distillery started in 1869. And that was on what's now the northern part of our campus. And that distillery operated up until Prohibition, actually operated through Prohibition, was owned by George Remus, the famous bootlegger and namesake for our bourbons during Prohibition. And then after Prohibition, it would get sold to the Shenley Company. It would become the old Quaker Distillery. And that would operate into the 1980s before it shut down. Then we purchased that property in the 2010s, and we use those old Shenley rick houses now for maturation. Then the main part of our campus was originally the Rossville Union Distillery, and that distillery started all the way back in 1847. And that distillery operated up until Prohibition. Then when they went to restart the distillery after Prohibition, there was a big fire in the cooker building that took out most of the distillery. And at that time, the Seagram's Company out of Canada came in. They made a lot of money off of American Prohibition, and they bought our property and rebuilt pretty much the whole distillery in the early 30s and 40s. So Seagram's had the distillery for many years. They had it all the way from 1933 till 2002. And in 2002, Seagram's dissolved. The distillery was sold to Pernod Ricard at the time. Pernod had it till 2008. And then it was owned by a holding company out of the Caribbean for just a few short years, operated under the moniker LDI from 2008 to 2011. And in 2011, MGP bought the distillery. And it's been MGP ever since. A lot of people were kind of confused with that name change. They're like, MGP, I mean Ross and Squibb, used to be MGP, but we're still MGP. The company's still MGP. Luxco is now the branded spirits arm of MGP, and Ross and Squibb is just one of the distilleries of MGP now. So we have 5 distilleries now. We have Ross and Squibb in Lawrenceburg. where all the bourbon traditionally came from MGP. Then we have Luxco in Kentucky. We have Limestone Branch in Kentucky. We have Distilladora Gonzalez Lux in Mexico, where some of our tequilas are made. And then we also have the original MGP distillery in Atchison, Kansas, where a lot of the GNS and gin is made.
Gotcha. That's quite a portfolio.
Yeah.
Man, that's a great history too. I mean, and George Remus, if people don't know who he is, they definitely need to get in the Google box and check him out, and read a little bit about him. So that's a great story. But yeah, I mean, it's a historic distillery, but it's a very mysterious distillery. I mean, that's the way people describe MGP, is that it has been somewhat mysterious. It's not, people don't go visit MGP. It's just there. So that was a question I was going to ask later, but I'm curious now that we're kind of on that. Now that you've got these branded products, I mean, because Luxco obviously has the distillery on site, people can go in, do things, visit, whatever. Now that you also have the Ross and Squibb, will there be the opportunity? Will visitors actually be able to come to visit?
That's a great question. I would love to have visitors at the distillery. I really would. Well, I mean, I have a lot of visitors at the distillery, but I would love to open it up to everybody. But when Seagram's built the place in the 30s, the Bourbon Trail wasn't a thing, and bourbon tourism wasn't a thing, and they just they built it in a way that makes it tough to bring in visitors.
Sure.
Just logistically. But we may figure those challenges out eventually. We might have something that people can come see. We would like to, and hopefully we will someday. But at this juncture, we're not really sure if we'll be able to do that or not.
Well, and it's kind of funny. That kind of goes back to what I said earlier, talking about the romanticized, vision, the art, the things, everybody, how people envision bourbon distillation. But a lot of times when you go to these distilleries and tour them, you realize this is almost like an industrial plant. I mean, there is a lot of things going on. And there, you've got these big stills that are running, the column stills, these beer stills that are running. They're 30, 40 feet tall. You got steam and pressure and valves and everything. You got, grates and these metal stairs and whatever else. I mean, I think a lot of people don't really, if they've not been to a distillery, especially a larger one, they don't realize how much goes on there. So, I mean, I can understand that, sometimes, especially back in the 30s and 40s, like you said, the Bourbon Trail wasn't there. Nobody was building distilleries with the intent of bringing people in to visit and say hello, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we got trucks coming through.
Right.
Rain comes through. It's a busy place. But it's also a really cool place. And I really do love having visitors come see it. It's really unique. We say we're one of the few biggest whiskey distilleries in the U.S., but I don't know of another distillery our size that does as many different things that we do. So we make our bourbons, our high rye bourbons, our rye whiskey, but we also make something called light whiskey. We also make a lot of gin at the distillery. We have 3 vacuum gin stills. We also have a 7-column spirits unit. So we make a lot of grain neutral spirits, vodka at the distillery. I don't know of another distillery our size that does as many different things as we do. It's a really neat place.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. I've never been there before, Matt. We probably need to pay a visit at some point, right?
Hey, come on down. I'll show you around.
That sounds great. So Matt, thanks, man. Let's jump back, Matt. Talk about this Rossville Union again. I know this is one of your favorites. So what do you think about this in terms of the palate and the finish on this?
The palate on this is bold. It's got that bold spice, heat, the peppercorn right up front. Almost to me, after you get through the peppercorn, there's a heat from like a red chili flake that kind of sticks with the palate there. Then some of the sweetness comes through. There's like a little bit of like gingerbread or fruit cake, but still kind of that sweet, those baking spices, but that heat kind of lingers with it the whole time. I like the 7-year age on this. as compared to what I've had from Rossville in the past, which I absolutely love. But this, I think that oak brings a little bit to it, a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more toastiness to kind of come and round out the finish before you just you get that nice long high, that rye spice, those peppercorns, the herbs, mints, spearmint, kind of go long on the finish with the oils. But the age really does quite a bit to round and bring this into profile really well.
Yeah, man, I agree, man. This palate on this one, like you said, I mean, initially right up front, you get that rye. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's there. A nice heat, not from necessarily from the proof, but from that rye, just that nice rye spice that comes through. I got almost like a herbal, like a mint tea or a black tea, kind of a tea kind of quality to it as well towards the end of the palate. Something that was more herbal, earthy maybe, which I really enjoyed that. But that sweetness comes through, like you said, as well. But man, there is that underlying current of that rye spice that is on your palate from initial, as soon as it hits your tongue, all the way back. And it stays there through the whole, I mean, for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds or more. Really, really cool. So I got to ask you again, Ian, how do we do on that?
Perfect. To me, it has everything that I think of when I think of a Lawrenceburg rye whiskey. It's got that rye spice. It's got those herbal notes, the mint, the dill, and then it kind of finishes with the sweetness and those barrel notes coming through. I think you guys hit it right on the nose.
One thing I was going to ask you before we wrap up round two here, I noticed on the bottle. Now this one, we talked about this off camera, and I'd seen some things online. People were calling this batch 1, but that's not necessarily that's not right. I mean, this is really the second batch. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Okay. And it was with the second batch that we decided to do that 7-year age statement. And we're gonna carry that on forward. It's gonna be a yearly annual release.
Okay. And I also noticed on the label, and I'll hold it back up just so everybody can see how pretty it looks. It also says that there were 82 barrels in this particular batch. So is that a standard, or is that just depending on, I mean, are you doing this to the specific profile? So you're matching those barrels to find the profile you all want each time, which you eat with each batch? Or is that something from batch to batch? There could be some variation.
There could be some variation from batch to batch.
Okay.
It's a yearly annual release, so we're not looking to recreate the same thing year after year. We want every year to be a little different, but this is how I like my rye whiskey. So I think it'll stay in this general palate.
Nice. Did you see how
year to year.
Did you see how excited Matt got when you said that there could be some slight variation from year to year? That just
gives you a reason to want to collect each one that much more. I love it. I love when companies and when brands do that, and each release is subtly or majorly different. I like to see that creativity, that barrel-driven approach.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it makes it more fun for us too when we're blending.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So Matt, we're at the end of round 2 here. So final thoughts on that. Well, I probably don't even have to ask Matt what his final thoughts are.
Oh, I mean, come on, for everybody.
But I will.
All our listeners have probably at some point in their life had an Indiana 95.5 rye, and this is an Indiana rye drinker's Indiana rye. It's just really, really great.
Yeah, it is, but it's blended with that 51% rye, which is really unique.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah, it throws in that sweetness that we talked about as well, which is, that underlying rye spice is all, like I said, all the way through on the palate, but that sweetness comes through as well, which is just really, really something that's unique. When you think about the Indiana ryes, you just don't expect that sweetness to be there as well. But man, just a nice combination of mint that we talked about, the citrus that we talked about, just all the rye spice that continues those baking spices, Matt. This one's nice. I might have to keep this bottle, Matt. I may not send it home with you.
We'll see about that.
All right. Let's take a quick break. Get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Ian Stirsman, the master distiller at Ross Squibb Distillery, in just a minute. From our good friends at the Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back to the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, thanks so much for sticking around for the third and final round.
Oh, Mark, I wouldn't miss it for anything. Love being back in the Bourbon Life Studios. How you doing over there in the control room there?
I'm doing good.
Houston?
I kind of feel like I look almost kind of bluish tonight with these lights. I'm not sure what's going on, but I feel like I've got this kind of bluish hue to me tonight.
I mean, I think kind of with you wearing that black shirt and with everything black in the background, and it's kind of just like a floating head and a neckline.
A floating
little
head?
bit, yeah.
But
anyway,
I might need to work on that. We probably need to change. You got a nice backdrop, Matt. You know, you've got the bottles and a couple of our fancy trophies up there and the Bourbon Life. Yeah, I need to work on mine, Matt. So we'll change places. You can come over here and be the floating head.
yeah. Except then I got to run all the equipment that I have no knowledge of.
Oh, that's
true.
Yeah. That's a good point. We probably don't want to do that.
No,
do
we
you?
don't.
Yeah.
No.
You're the talent, man. You're the talent. You show up and you make things happen.
I don't know about that. I'm just here for a good time. And so is our guest. He is the master distiller at Ross Squibb in Lawrenceville, Indiana, Ian Stirsman. Welcome back for round 3. Thanks for sticking it out with us.
Oh, I'm having fun. I won't leave you.
We appreciate that, man, very much. You know, I'm just gonna tell you that I like the shelf behind you, man. You've got some nice bottles.
Yeah, no kidding. Talk about the backdrop there.
Yeah. It looks like you've got the 6. I guess that's 1 through 6 probably up there of the Repeal Reserve, I'm guessing. And
we got 1 through 6 of the Repeal Reserve. We got the Gatsby bottles in the middle.
Yeah.
The whole second row is almost all the Rossville barrel proof. I do have a couple of the Rossville 94 mixed in as well. And then the bottom shelf is a lot of Remus store picks and Remus barrels.
Yeah, very nice. I'm focused on that. Matt's probably focused on the second shelf. I'm kind of going for that top shelf there.
I'm also curious what's in that little 1 gallon there.
Oh yeah, he's got the barrel back there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a decoration.
Oh, I was hoping that was like the super top secret.
Ian's distilling his own at home.
The director's cut or whatever you call it there.
Oh man. Well, I tell you what, Ian, if you don't care, if you'd like to tell everybody what we have poured up on this third and final round, that'd be great.
Yeah, we have our Remus Gatsby Reserve, and this was our 2022 release. This is also going to be a yearly annual release, and this is those same 2 mash bills that are in our Remus 94 that we had earlier, our 21% rye and 36% rye bourbons. But the barrels that I choose to go into this are all at least 15 years old. And it comes in a really great Art Deco package, kind of above my head. And it's just a really good giftable bourbon. It's one of those special occasion bourbons.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I would hold up the bottle. I just have the sample. No, I'm like, man, can I get the whole bottle? I'm just kidding. No, 15-year-old or more, that's not going to happen. But when I opened the package, no, I'm serious. When I opened the package and I saw this in there, I was thrilled. You know, as much as Matt is the Rossville Union barrel proof guy, these 15-year-old MGPs, I've never had this, but I was excited to get that because that was a bottle I wanted to get and I wasn't able to track one down. So I'm thrilled to finally get the opportunity to taste it with the man. You blended that one. Is that right? That was part of you blended that one? Or? Okay.
Yeah, I blended, but we have a master blender too, who I work really close with.
Yeah.
and yeah, we work together as a team on it. So
Very nice.
can't leave him
Very
out. He's the more important part of the team.
nice. You're the science guy. He's the art guy, right?
Yeah, and he's been doing it a lot longer than I have. Blending, that is.
I got you.
I've been distilling a long time, but he's been blending a long time. So
Yeah, very, very cool. Matt, what are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one, man?
Well, first let's talk about the color here. Wow,
Yeah,
that's just a super gorgeous color in the glass. That like dark mahogany, just really, really lovely color, really clings to the glass really, really well. Now on the nose on this, I get a lot of like red wine fruits. It's really luscious, really full bodied uh, of a nose on it, like dark berries, little bit of like vanilla. Of course, the barrel influences, some of the oak come through as well. There's almost some nutty aroma to it as well.
Yeah.
Some nut and aroma in there, like a vanilla cream or like some sort of a creamy custardy nose that I pick up too on it. It's certainly not as rye forward, I think, as we had with the regular Remus. I think the barrel on this one has really mellowed some of that out and imparted those dark, luscious, rich flavors more.
Yeah. Matt, talking about all the different aromas, the one thing stands out to me. It's almost like like a Luxardo cherry, that dark cherry with that dark syrup, that sweetness that comes through. Man, I get that, but I also get leather on this one, like a nice hint of leather, which as soon as I smell that, that's when it's like the trigger, like, okay, this is an older whiskey. Unless they've done something tricky to it. But man, as soon as I start picking up notes like that, it's like I just know that this is an older whiskey. But man, I could nose on this all day long. Of course, I want to drink it, right? But so Ian, how do we do on the notes on that one?
I mean, you guys are good. The Luxardo cherry syrup is actually a descriptor I've used in the past.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, good on you, Mark.
I get that. I get sometimes I get some like raisin in there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on. I get different things on different days with this one. It's got a lot going on.
Now, this was like, there were several people that picked this as one of the top bourbons from last year, and you guys won some rewards, and like the ratings on this one was kind of crazy. Is that right?
Yeah. Both the Repeal Reserve and the Gatsby Reserve both got a lot of awards. Did really well last year, so we're proud of both of those.
Yeah, very nice. I've been fortunate. I've tracked down probably. I think I have maybe 3 or 4 of those Repeal Reserves. I don't have all 6. But man, this one, holy cow, I could nose this all day long. I mean, this is awesome. So let's talk about, since we're talking about older barrels and maturation, let's kind of talk about that. You guys, does everything go in the barrel? Is it 120? Is that right? Is that what you all do? Or do you fluctuate depending on what the release is?
Yeah, we do 120.
Okay.
Almost exclusively, not completely exclusively, but 120 is the barrel entry proof that we've found works best for us, and that goes back many decades here at the distillery.
Okay, so people listening, obviously, you can go in as high as 125, but when you go at 120, that's going to create some additional expenses for you guys because you're going to have more barrels, because you're going to have more product to put in those barrels. If you're proof down to 120. I'm assuming you're coming off the still at higher than 120, so you're proofing down a little bit to get to that point.
Yes, yeah, we come off the doublers at 135.
Okay, all right. So proof down to 120, going into the barrels. Just out of curiosity, can you talk about your barrels, what you're using, or who you guys work with, and like char and things on that?
We work with multiple coopers, and most of the time, these are going to be 4-char barrels, 4-char stave barrels with 2-char heads.
Okay.
And we work with multiple coopers. Our barrels our warehouses are a little bit unique from what you would find down in Kentucky. You could never build buildings like these warehouses are built anymore. But I mean, they're just these massive brick, concrete, and steel buildings, and they're 6 stories high. We have 6 ricks high in each story.
Okay.
So because of that, it's just it's gonna be unique the way things age in those warehouses. So the seasonality during the summer, it's never really going to get as hot in one of our rick houses as it's going to be outside, and during the winter, it's never going to get very cool either. So we have the seasons, we have the seasonality, but we kind of take the extremes out of the seasonality a little bit, and also. Our distillery, for those of you that don't know Lawrenceburg, Lawrenceburg is right where Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana meet. So the 275 loop around Cincinnati, Ohio actually runs through Lawrenceburg. And we're right on the Ohio River. And we're right where a little creek, a little river, I guess, called Tanner's Creek runs into the Ohio River. And our rick houses are actually part of the levee system. They're built into the levee system. And because of that, it's very humid in our little microclimate, being down in the river valley like that. And that humidity tends to drive the proof in the barrel even lower. Yeah. So we start off a little lower at 120, and then that proof tends to drop in the barrel too, just because the partial pressure of water and the air being higher is going to slow down that evaporation rate of water, but it's not going to slow down the evaporation rate of alcohol. So that proof is going to go down a little bit.
Yeah. So again, for people listening out there, that angel share people talk about, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's alcohol that evaporates out of the barrel. So when you're in Kentucky, like on the higher floors, you're going to lose water and your proof will go up. So you can go, if you go in the barrel at 120, you can go up to 130, 135, whatever. But what you're saying is that, since there's more humidity, you're going to lose more alcohol. So do you ever have barrels that actually go up in proof? I mean, have you seen that in the warehouses at all?
We have, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Typically they're going to go down.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's funny. I was reading something the other day about your warehouses, and somebody said that they're more like the warehouses in Scotland than they are in Kentucky. I mean, would you call that kind of an accurate description, or, I mean, do you have thought about that?
I've never really thought about it that way, but they have a lot of stone warehouses in Scotland, I believe. So I think that makes some sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And yours are not, some people that have the brick warehouses, I think like Buffalo Trace, obviously warehouse C, they've got the heat cycling where they can run the steam. Your warehouses, you're not heat cycling in there, are you? Or
Nope. No, okay. Just open to the natural effects of the seasons.
I gotcha. That's what I thought. That's really cool. So I'm kind of curious in terms of temperature fluctuations. How much do you see in those warehouses? I mean, you got brick. I'm assuming they're closed. So is there that big of a fluctuation in there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference from the winter to the summer, but it's gonna be lessened just a little bit. I mean, okay. Summer's never going to get quite as hot in there as it is outside. The winter's never going to get as cold as it is outside. It's just all that thermal mass inside those warehouses combined with those thick concrete, steel, and brick walls.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay.
But we still have the seasons.
Yeah, you still have the seasons, obviously. So you're going to get the fluctuation. I mean, you got obviously the new make is the distillate's going in and out of the barrel, obviously. Just not quite the same as it would in a metal wrapped Kentucky warehouse with 9 floors or something like that. So now you were talking this on your shelf there. You mentioned some single barrels. Now you guys have a single barrel program there. Can you talk about that a little bit and what you guys do and how that works?
Yeah, our single barrel program operates much like anyone else's. Other than ours is unique because we actually offer 3 different mash bill barrels with our single barrel program. Because Remus and Rossville, we use barrels from multiple mash bills on. So if we were just to give an option of all of our 21% rye bourbon, that wouldn't really be a representation of Remus. So what we do is we offer up one barrel of our 21% rye bourbon, one barrel of our 36% rye bourbon, and then one barrel of a kind of a specialty mash bill we do, which is our 49% rye bourbon. And 10% of that 49% is malted rye. So that's a mash bill most people haven't seen from us unless they've done one of the Remus barrel selections, and it's a really really popular mash bill within the selection. A lot of people pick that one. It ends up being a lot of people's favorites, and we're excited to do some more stuff with that in the future with that mash bill too.
So, all right, I gotta just jump in here real quick with this mash bill. What was it always just well, maybe I should have let you finish because you said you're excited to do more with that mash bill. And my question was, what was like, what's the program behind, what was the purpose of this mash bill? But it sounds like you're about to tell us.
I mean, I think the purpose when we created this mash bill is just, we like to think we're known for our rye, our ability to work with the rye grain, because it's a really difficult thing to do in distilleries, especially at distilleries of our size. And we kind of wanted to push we like to say we're known for our high rye bourbons, so we wanted to push that all the way to the highest rye, right? So that 49% rye bourbon, and with the 10% malted rye, and it's turned out really good. We're really happy with the batches we've created. We're really happy. I think people have been happy with it in the single barrel program, definitely. And then with our Rossville single barrel program, we have kind of a specialty mash bill that goes into it as well. So we have our two rye whiskeys that go into the Rossville is that 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And then we have the 51% rye, 45% corn, 4% malted barley. And then the third mash bill we offer in our single barrel program for Rossville is our 51% rye, 49% barley malt. And that's another one that's really popular within the program.
Huh. I've never heard of either of those specialties, obviously.
Yeah, so it's a newer mash bill. We've been doing it at the distillery. You talk about our 95.5 and our 21 and 36% rye bourbons, and those are, been doing those at the distillery, many, many decades. But those other ones are newer to the distillery, ones we've just started doing in recent years.
Yeah, very, very nice. Matt, I tell you what, why don't we jump back to the whiskey here and talk about this Remus Gatsby Reserve. What do you think about it in terms of the palate and the finish?
Absolutely. Let me grab a quick little sip there to refresh myself.
Sorry about that.
No, that's great. It's nice and peppery, oaky, right on the front of the palate. The high rye that I wasn't picking up so much on the nose really comes through the front of the palate. There's a peppercorn, and definitely I got a lot of baking spices. It has a lot of those reminiscent Christmas time baking spices, cinnamons, nutmeg, cardamom, allspice, all of those come through. The age shows there's an oaky, leathery note to it that I pick up. Then there's like a almond biscotti kind of cookie flavor, like a little bit drying, a little bit sweet on there as well. But some of those luscious fruits that we were talking about, the red wine fruits, like some plum kind of comes through, some of the darker fruits, but then there's a brightness to finish it off, like a nice orange oil, a little bit of like the mint or the rye spice and some herb coming through down the line. Just really nice, really layered, really, really voluminous, just really great.
Yeah, man, I could nose and drink on this one all day long. Just telling you, man, this is, I can't add anything more than what you said, obviously, Matt. To me, that cherry, talking about the Luxardo cherry on the nose, I still pick that up on the palate. Kind of the sweetness and that dried fruit, or the dark fruit, the dark cherry. But that sweetness that comes through it, that leather lingers as well, comes through, especially on the finish. I pick that up. The oakiness, you can pick that up obviously as well. It comes in. on the palate. I didn't really detect it that much on the nose, but on the palate, it comes through, but it's not overwhelming. It's it blends in nicely with everything else that's going on. So yeah, definitely a nice combination. So many layers to this. So much complexity to this bourbon. And now I'm really disappointed, Ian, that I didn't track down a bottle of this last year, man. Goodness gracious. So, how do we do on the palate and finish on this one?
Really good. Again, the notes that really stood out to me that you talked about were the kind of the Christmas notes, all those the baking spices. It kind of reminds me of like a gingerbread cookie or something. All those Christmas spice notes. Really, what stands out to me on this one.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's jump back and talk a little bit before we wrap it up, because we're almost at the end of round 3 here. So I'm just curious, Ian. I mean, you've been doing this for a while now, and that you've been at the distillery for a while, I should say. You've been in this role since what, January of last year? Is that right? January 2022?
Yeah.
So overall, what's been, or can you say what's the best part of the journey been for you up to this point?
Man, it's all been good. It's all been good. It's hard to pick out a best. I'll give you a kind of a multi-part best.
You go right ahead. That sounds good.
I think just being part of the team at the distillery, it's we have an awesome team. It takes more than one person to run a distillery our size that does as many different things as we do. And we just have an awesome technical team, an awesome operations team. The camaraderie we have and being part of that team is incredible for me. But then what's kind of new to me and has been just as cool is being able to get out in the market now, seeing people like you at the in Louisville for the Bourbon
Right.
Classic, getting out to those events and just getting to interact with the community and the people that love our whiskeys. That's been new to me, but it's been an incredible part of the journey. So it's been really fun, making paper. You don't get out and get to talk to paper. It's pretty cool making whiskey that people enjoy and that brings people together. So it's a really fun part.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's probably no The Paper Life podcast or any other podcast dedicated to the production and manufacturing of paper. Am I right?
Not that I know of.
So Ian, what does the future look like for you and also for Ross and Squibb?
I think we have a lot of cool things coming up. Some of those things are going to be announced here fairly soon, just with different things we're working on from a product standpoint. And we're just going to continue to innovate. Like I said, we're really scientific about what we're doing, and we're trying to respect the traditions we have at the distillery because we know it works. I'm a huge fan of our distillery. I'm a huge fan of the whiskeys that we've made in the past, and I want to continue to make those great whiskeys. But I also want to continue to get better as a whole at the distillery and make. I want the best whiskeys that our distillery is going to make. Hopefully haven't been made yet, right?
Right.
So you're going to see us continue to push the envelope with new innovations, and we're going to continue to grow these brands, I hope, and have a good time doing it.
Yeah, that sounds great. So where can our listeners find more information about the distillery and your products?
So several places, but the Luxco website is probably the best.
Okay.
Yeah, but we also have social. So George Remus Bourbon, Rossville Union Rye Whiskey, and Ross and Squibb Distillery. We have social for all three.
And we'll be patiently waiting for the opening of the distillery tours coming soon.
I'm telling you, it's open to you guys. Just shoot me an email and we'll.
Yeah. All right. No, we appreciate that very much. Matt, before we wrap it up though, let's go back, talk about the Gatsby. What do you think? Final thoughts on this one?
I can see why this has so many accolades behind it and has won so many awards. It hits on a bunch of different levels. It's really complex, and you could sit here and wax poetic about it all you want, but it's just really good too. It's just a great drinking whiskey that I think reflects really well the brand and everything that you all are putting forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Matt. I mean, I've had fortunate to have several of the 15-year-old different whiskeys from last year, and this would definitely be in my top 3. There's no question about it. I mean, this is spectacular. Absolutely love this one, Ian. So, kudos, obviously, congratulations as well for the product. Not that you need it from the Bourbon Life, but it's a great product, man. Very, very impressed with this one. And really enjoying this one. Can't wait to finish off the rest of this sample bottle. All right. So before we wrap it up tonight, final thoughts, Ian, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, just thanks for having me. I had a really good time getting to talk to you guys, and thanks for all the kind words about Remus and Rossville. It was a great time. Thank you.
Great, we appreciate it, Matt. Before we wrap it up, anything you want to add?
Ian, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us and our guests this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is our guests you all are listening. Man, am I glad that you made it out of Chillicothe and got into Lawrenceburg and are where you're at now, because who knows what we would or wouldn't be tasting if you weren't. So thank you for that. Thanks for taking the time again. And we're really looking forward to seeing what all you got up your sleeves for us and what Ross and Squibb has coming in the future.
Yeah, well said, Matt. Definitely. And I do want to thank all of our listeners. I want to thank you, of course, Ian, for joining us tonight, man. I've been looking forward to this one since we talked back in, I think it was early February, back at Bourbon Classic in Louisville. So happy we were able to set this up, and really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight, sending us these wonderful samples. We've really enjoyed it, had a great time talking with you, getting to know you as well. Happy to do that. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you on a personal level, not just, what you're doing as a master distiller, but who you are as a person. I think it's always fun to be able to get to share those stories so people know more about, who you are, and that's great. So we do want to thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate everything they do for us. We thank you, our listeners, whatever time of day it is, like Matt said, that you're listening to us. We appreciate you taking the time to join us and spend some time with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also join our private Facebook group, the Bourbon Lifers. So we would love to have you in there. We have a great time talking, sharing things in that group on Facebook. So join that if you want to. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.